Welcome to Influential Visions. My name is Tyler Cohen Wood. Here, we interview futuristic leaders to share their deep industry knowledge and business experience with you, ensuring that you have your finger on the pulse and your eyes wide open. And here's your host today, Nat Schooler.
Today, I am joined by Jessica Gioglio. You are co-author of The Laws of Brand Storytelling, and you're a marketing consultant and focusing mainly on consumer and consumer tech, right?
That's correct. Yeah, thanks so much for having me today. It's great to be here with you.
Super, super. Well, I'm really pleased you joined me. You've got a lot of great work history, right? Because you were actually head of social media for Dunkin' Donuts, yeah?
I was for 5 years. It was a very sweet job, lots of perks in the form of donuts, coffee, and even ice cream, because Dunkin' Brands is Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin Robbins.
It just sounds like a lot of calories, to be fair.
It's a good thing I like running and athletic kind of, exercises, but I never deprived myself when I was there, because you would actually go into the Dunkin' Donuts test kitchen for meetings with the culinary team, and they'd make you kind of fresh donuts from the fryer. And how do you turn that down? You just don't.
You can't turn that down. I used to have the same problem in the booze industry. You just get,
Yeah.
I mean, you get free as many samples as you want. It's just like,
Yeah, and you need to be an evangelist for the product. So, you have to taste test everything and be able to kind of write marketing copy, to speak eloquently about the products. So, you need to do that market research firsthand.
yeah, very much so. So your major focus, right, is on PR and in particular content marketing, right? And kind of SEO sort of fits in and around that. Like, we're not SEO geeks, so we're not going to kind of delve too much into that, right? But storytelling with content marketing is just so much fun, yeah. And prior to us getting on and recording, we had a little look behind the scenes, and we kind of threw a load of clothes around and that kind of stuff, right?
People are going to be wondering what's going on. You're going to have to share the video to show that this is not as naughty as it sounds.
No, it's not. But what we did is we had a little look. I actually ran a report on you, a social media audience intelligence report, and I found that we both found that really interesting. And yeah, the kind chaps over at Audience have kind of got behind my podcast and basically given me access to this platform, which we use for some of the influencer work that we do within the B2B SaaS, right? So I'm gonna literally just share screens with you right now, and we can kind of just talk through the report that I ran. I'm really happy because they reduced the time that it takes to run a report. It used to take ages, and this tool is plugged straight into the Twitter fire hose. These guys are basically Twitter partner, basically. So they've got access to all the past Twitter data and everything else. So, but with your report, we were quite interested because over here, I know you're big into social media, you're big into marketing, your name on there is Bostonian or something?
Savvy Bostonian. So I named my Twitter handle, I think back in 2008 when I joined, around this lifestyle blog that I had called the Savvy Bostonian. And I was working for TripAdvisor at the time. And part of the reason why I was hired by TripAdvisor was this lifestyle blog. So I was this micro influencer blogger in Boston. So when we were going to launch social media for TripAdvisor, I thought, well, I should be on Twitter. And I started signing up kind of as the blogger persona. And honestly, because my surname is so difficult to spell and to pronounce, I just never went down that path. So I've just decided to stay Savvy Bostonian forever now.
Right. I can understand that because I had to ask you how to pronounce it.
Yeah, and try and spell it, because how you pronounce it and how you spell it are two different things.
Totally the opposite. So when we looked at this, right, we had a look, and you're big into travel, obviously. So you've attracted the kind of audience that you would expect, yeah? So you've basically put out a load of great content, and you've attracted this audience. We were slightly confused about the dad husband kind of thing. Like,
yeah, I still don't know if you click on it, does it tell you why?
it doesn't tell you why, but it'll tell you the kind of people that are in that. So it'll go, you can delve basically deeper into that, and we could sort of have a look at it. But I think
Yeah,
we would
I must be sharing some content on like marketing campaigns to dads.
yeah, maybe, or maybe you're just followed by lots of dads and husbands. I don't know, right?
Potentially.
I don't know.
Yeah, 'cause I'm
So
definitely not tweeting about dad parenting tips. I will tell you that one.
you're not. But look,
No.
so down here it shows the distribution by the most common words used by the audience to describe themselves, and its variance from the baseline, right? So you've got the term marketing, social media, digital, so lots of interesting things here. Very interesting.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
Yeah. So let's go back to your entire audience, shall we? And we'll have a look at that. So basically, yeah, we've got London, we've got innovation, Boston events, which it fits, right? It fits with where you are right now in your life, where you've been, and connects all the dots, right? So let's go and have a look. Oops. Let's go and have a look at the insights. Let's look at the demographics. Here we go. So before we jumped on, what was the most interesting? Was it the personality that we looked at that was quite interesting?
I think so. Let's take a look at that again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this was really fascinating. I love how the insights from IBM Watson are pulled in, because you actually start to almost get a persona for who is following you. And when we were chatting, it almost made me feel like I'm building this amazing tribe of kind of people I want to go have a beer with, to be honest. They sound quite fun.
Yeah. And it was quite interesting because it does describe me as well. And we weren't even connected on Twitter. So that's what's really interesting. And
Yeah.
I want to delve into that in the cross-channel kind of the way that sort of works. But it makes sense though, right? If you think about it, because if you're on Twitter, right, and you're attracting that kind of person, surely you're going to be on Facebook and you're probably going to be attracting that kind of person over there as well, right? Wouldn't
Absolutely. I think Twitter is always a great sample size that you can use to look across your channels.
Yeah. So I thought that was quite interesting. So in terms of sort of creating content, right? Let's just think about the buying mindset of your community, right? And 66% of those people like brand names versus 51.47, right? Of the wider kind of marketplace, right? So what we did laugh at though, didn't we, was the fact that members of this, so 24.15% of your audience are likely to be influenced by social media versus 59.19 of the wider audience, right? So we found that quite interesting, didn't we?
We did, because I think, most of my audience are people in the marketing and business space, and especially have expertise in social media. So while they kind of love brands and they love case studies, they're not necessarily always going to be kind of influenced by social media because they work in the field. So they probably know a bit better, but they really kind of over-index and geek out on knowing the best practices of it.
Yeah, so that was quite interesting. So in terms of how you would use this, I'm going to stop sharing screens because we get a bit distracted. But in terms of how you would use this, you would basically put together some sort of blogs or some kind of video content, and you would use a report like that for insights, right? To create that story, right?
Yeah, to create your content, to think about the types of stories you want to tell. There's a kind of famous line that says great storytellers play to their audience. Well, if you want to play to your audience, I think this report really gives you powerful insights to start shaping, well, what types of stories could I tell that would be interesting to this audience? So it's a phenomenal place to start. It's given me a lot of ideas already as I'm looking to kind of create more content for social media, perhaps do some more videos for YouTube myself. So I'm excited. The creative juices are flowing.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And also I like the fact that you can see where the people are. So then if you're writing around travel, right, you can see that you've got like a massive chunk of people in America. Okay.
Right.
You can look at the kind of demographics of those people, and then you can say, well, actually, okay, out of that audience, I know that they're really adventurous because they're like me. Yeah, because you're adventurous, right?
Yes.
So then you can turn around and say, well, actually, I think maybe some of those people would like to go to Belize on a trip. So I can write a post that says, you know, why Americans love to go to Belize in the summer, right? Or something like this. Would you?
Or why Americans should go to Belize in the summer. Yeah.
Why they
Exactly.
shouldn't go.
No, why they should. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could do why they shouldn't go. That might, you could make it very tongue in cheek and be like, you know, those articles where it's like, oh, it has the most gorgeous beaches, but you'll probably hate them kind of thing.
It's one of my favorite places. It's just super. Have you
Is
been?
it? I've actually never been, no. But I have done some adventurous travel. I've been to India a few times. I directed a very big film shoot in Delhi. I went to the Taj Mahal. That was quite fun. So that, you know, so a lot of things. I've done like all these crazy road trips around Europe by myself. You know, I'm very kind of intrepid and adventurous with traveling.
Fantastic. Yeah, road trips are so much fun.
So
Absolutely
much
brilliant.
fun. And actually quite good to do on your own. I think that some people would be afraid to do that, but you just blast great music in a language you don't understand. And
That's like the story of my life, right? Seriously, yeah.
I have
But
all these songs in Spanish and French. I don't speak Spanish or French, but they're on my Spotify and I just don't know what they say, but I love the beat and the sound of them.
yeah. That's kind of random, right? That's pretty
A fun fact for you, yes.
Yeah.
But those are from those road trips where it was just playing on the radio so much. I'm like, yeah, I'm into this song.
Brilliant. So how can companies and brands tell better stories?
Yeah, so this is the big question, right? So I'm a firm believer that every company, every brand has a story to tell. And how I recommend that companies look at that. So we've already talked a little bit about how great storytellers play to their audience. So audience metrics, you know, and insights are very important. But when I start working with companies, we actually start from the strategy standpoint and also really from a sense of, you know, what is your current state as a brand? Who are you as a brand? What do you stand for? Those core values. Because if you're going to be a great storyteller and you want people to actually buy in to your stories and believe them and be kind of inspired or kind of motivated by them to take an action, people have to believe in you and you have to have a strong brand. So I really go through kind of those kind of core values because I think the biggest mistake companies make is they look at storytelling as a rebranding tactic and they haven't actually done the work inside to actually reflect the image they want to project on the outside. So if I'm working with a brand, for example, that has kind of an image they're trying to improve, let's actually document that journey, or let's actually, you know, implement programs that improve that customer experience and tell that story and be a bit transparent about it. And that's how you start to get customers to believe in what you're telling them, but also to kind of get behind you and to support you and to follow you on that journey.
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
And I know you're quite a branding expert yourself as well. So how do you feel about that? Does that resonate kind of with how you're looking at branding? Like the brand you have to have a strong sense of your brand to start forming, you know, really what that storytelling strategy is and the types of stories that would really make sense for you to tell as a brand.
Yeah, 100%. And I actually shared a post on my personal site a few weeks ago, maybe months actually, about the story of Johnny Walker and the brand Johnny Walker, right? And like, if anyone wants to learn about branding, like you need to study Johnny Walker because it is like iconic, like Keep On Walking and the logo and the way that it all ties in with, you know, the whole brand story from, what is it, 1780 or something, right? It just, like, I'm really passionate about it. And when I went out there and I found this Johnny Walker video that is on YouTube, it absolutely blew my mind. Like, it blew my mind to pieces, because it was just such a great bit of storytelling of like the values, the brand values, yeah, the encouragement that it provides. You know, keep on walking, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You got to send me the video so I can see it as well, because I love seeing great examples of storytelling. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, right? And you know, typically where I go from there is companies tend to tell two major types of stories: macro stories and micro stories. And the macro story ties into kind of your why, who you are as a brand, your mission, what you stand for. So a lot of what you're talking about, yeah, start with why. Exactly. That's hugely influenced me in all of the marketing and storytelling work I've done across my entire career. For, you know, I've mentioned to you, I've worked for so many different companies like TripAdvisor, Dunkin' Donuts, Comcast, really going into kind of, you know, why are you in business? You know, what do you stand for? And, you know, some great examples are, you know, we think about Tom's shoes, they're mission driven. You know, their why is about, for every pair of shoes you buy, they give a pair of shoes back to a child in need.
Yeah.
And kind of the whole founder story of Tom's is about, you know, realizing a huge problem in, specifically in Argentina, but obviously kind of transcends across the world, about children not having proper footwear, and not realizing that when you don't have a pair of shoes, actually how much that impacts your life. And when consumers start to realize that, they want to do business with a company like Tom's because they share in those values. Now, not every company is kind of, you know, cause marketing driven. You might have like REI in the US, who they're an outdoor apparel brand, and everything's about opting outside and about living kind of a lifestyle in the great outdoors, and really kind of celebrating kind of kayaking and canoeing and all those things I probably wish I did a bit more of. So, you know, you start to see, when you take any kind of brand that you really admire, and chances are, you know, you as the consumer will know their why. And that's shown that they've done such a remarkable job in building that brand. Now, when we go into micro stories, obviously brands aren't kind of just a one note kind of brand. You know, you have that overarching purpose, but then, you know, if you're an REI, there's going to be a lot of areas you really want to go super deep and niche. And maybe even using Dunkin' Donuts as an example, you know, Dunkin's macro story and why is about keeping busy people on the go running. So for the longest time, you know, the slogan is America runs on Dunkin'. And, you know, as you go into other markets, it might not be America runs on Dunkin', but it's about kind of culturally adapting the brand to that country, to kind of the consumers in that market, to kind of delight them with a sweet treat with a donut, to give them a boost with coffee or tea, etc. So that's kind of that macro story. But then when you go into those micro stories, that's like the lifeblood of kind of what's happening in the business. So that really allows you to go niche and talk about, well, what are the stories behind how the products are made? You know, what are the stories that are happening in kind of different markets around the world? You know, going maybe into kind of sustainability and how the products are sourced. Maybe talking about menu innovation and kind of weird and wonderful and wacky kind of things that didn't quite work, or, you know, maybe kind of getting customers to feedback on, you know, the next flavor of ice cream or the next donut they want to see coming to market. Or even really kind of practical and tactical, like, you know, holidays like Christmas. You know, I think we've seen here in the UK, the John Lewis Christmas advert came out this year. And I think the Christmas ads in the UK it's such a storytelling moment for all of the brands here. And again, it's showing storytelling through that holiday occasion. And really the layer with those micro stories, because you could go in so many different directions, but they have to kind of make sense in the bigger context of that macro story and your why as a business. So essentially, you know, when I coach businesses on how to build that strategy, we'd look at that overarching why, But then maybe we'd look at maybe around a handful of those kind of core micro stories. Like, what are those priority areas of the business that really make sense to tell stories around? And then where your audience insights come in there is we really look at, well, the push pull with companies is always, what stories do companies want to put out there versus what do consumers actually want to hear? And I think that's where your insights really have that honesty, kind of accountability piece that companies need to take seriously if they want to be successful.
Yeah, completely. I think tying it all together is the real magic, right? And so many people, like in social media, they seem to think that they're just in social media, but you can't do marketing without having the brand piece. Like everyone's like, oh, but I want a logo, and there's all this confusion around logos and like, well, I have to have a logo. It's like, well, you need a story first, right? And then you come up with a logo. You don't just go and give a designer a brief without having some wording and say, well, and that's what I'm trying to educate people around. It's like, you need to actually come up with this story and tie it together with these micro stories, right? Which is what you're basically saying. And then you've got your content calendar, and obviously you're going to have other things that are gonna affect that throughout the year, right? Because obviously we've got this problem right now with lockdowns and whatever, right? But in the future there'll be something else that people need to talk about, and they need to show empathy for and empathy around and stuff like this.
Well, like there's an element of like you have your sales and marketing calendar, right? You also really want to look at your overall kind of comms calendar, because almost thinking about the brand journalism side of it, where the public relations team really knows about all the exciting kind of news announcements coming out of the business. But then you actually I also really challenge businesses as well. Something I advise people is to really form like a kind of a core team internally of people that have access to interesting things happening in the business. So of course it's going to be sales and marketing, or if it's B2B, maybe like a key kind of client account managers, they could have some, case studies, really interesting stories or problems solved, if it's allowed to be shared publicly. But then also go a bit deeper. So we talked about PR, because PR always knows good and bad what's happening, but then actually go to customer service, because get this, not all customers actually call in about bad things. I used to do double jacks. I've done it at Comcast and at Dunkin' Donuts. Now with cable television, people do really call in to just kind of yell at you, but actually people also were calling in to say like how lovely the technician was, and how, they really spent a lot of time like teaching them how to like, work something they didn't know how to work. And they really wanted that person to get credit for a good job. And you start to hear like these amazing stories of like, oh, the technician also like used the ladder to like help me do something else because I'm like a little old lady, and my son wasn't coming over for another week, and really heartwarming stories. So you never know. So I encourage that, as well as looking at your subject matter experts in your company as well too. And this is really great in B2B because you have people who can be just world leading experts in certain areas. And they're kind of, doing research or kind of pioneering different innovations. And, even kind of, you can even turn things like data into a remarkable story, like working with your data scientists, for example. So there's a lot of ways that you can really source these, but the overarching principles there, remain the same about using the analytics kind of with the strategy that you've sorted.
Yeah, definitely. I agree completely with all of that, actually. And when you put that together with the external influencers that are influencing the market, you can fit that into a really nice strategy where all the stories get told, the customer stories throughout the supply chain, right, get told. Mm-hmm. And it becomes really quite exciting because if you're in the technology industry, for example, there's this big tech for good thing. Yeah. So for example, you could be talking about a business that has a client that does, something within that space. And then you can showcase how that's changed people's lives, right? And all of these tech companies have these stories, but I think a lot of them they just get caught up with like features and benefits. It's like,
Exactly.
and that's the biggest issue, isn't it, really? But
Yeah, well, because so I've also worked at Sprinkler, so I've been in the B2B space as well in marketing, and it's true because you have these kind of, especially like that platform. There's so many bells and whistles, right? Like so many great features, and it's really easy just to do like feature function kind of benefit type marketing, but actually like I find customers kind of get a bit overwhelmed sometimes of that, and you know I actually did a lot of work with the sales team there to go into those meetings as a former head of social and just actually kind of dissect, well, thinking about the big problems you're trying to solve for and actually telling stories, like real customer stories, in a meeting setting, saying, well, if you actually really want to kind of solve for this problem, here's how you can actually use the tool to do it, and really kind of explaining to them under the lens of use cases versus kind of overwhelming them with so much jargon, which does work really well.
yeah,
But I do actually think, for the record, a lot of B2B case studies are written really badly. So I would say, if you really want to inspire someone and you want kind of those case studies, whether using a little bit of storytelling kind of tactics with examples and great visuals, I think really helps kind of bring that conversion point home.
Yeah, well, we could talk about that all day, right? And I think actually having the people that are really doing exciting things within the business is a very good point. And I think too many of these companies are basically just using marketing people within the business, to tell the stories in this how would you put it, whirlwind of fancy
Sure.
words and things like this, when actually it's not necessary. What's necessary is someone who's passionate about something they're creating, tell the story about why they're creating it and who they're creating it for and what it's going to do for those people, right? And that comes on to the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is,
well, can I give you one quick example before we move
please.
on that? Because I think GE or General Electric has done a really great job with employee-driven storytelling, and they are in the B2B space, although they do really market probably more like a consumer marketer. But they have employees do like takeovers of the Facebook page for like a day or a couple days, and they just show a day in their life or a week in their life. And I mean, these are people that are working on super technical, huge kind of machines, and it's really amazing. And as someone who's really not that level of technical, I actually find them quite interesting because the employees break it down in a way that's it's accessible for someone like me to understand, and it's not necessarily always done with video. And I think that's a key point as well too, because sometimes the marketing person or the executive becomes the face of it because they're better on camera or they're more well spoken. But you could use blog posts, you could use a podcast, you could also just use a bit of text and an image, and there's different ways you can bring that story to life. And I think GE's done a nice job kind of mixing that up based on the strengths of the employee and the kind of the topics that they're kind of going into.
Yeah, very much so. And if you want to check out something really cool, there's a distillery called Renegade Rum in Grenada, and
Cool.
it's a connection with my godfather. But it's phenomenal. Like, they've gone through this whole process from creating the content around the building of the distillery and the problems they faced when they put it all together, and then importing all of the goods from their sister distillery in Ireland, and how like they had to change the height of these poles, electricity lines and phone lines on the street so they could get this equipment to the distillery, and then and like the massive problems that they faced, and how they're transforming the production of rum, and that entire story of the quality of the ingredients going all the way through the consumer to the consumer, right, from field to glass, is just and that's what's exciting me at the moment, is really that full traceability, because that's what people want.
Yeah.
So
they want to feel like they know the family. They've known that, they've essentially documented their journey, right? Which I think is really powerful. And I think sometimes companies are scared to do that because, especially the bigger you get, you feel like, well, we have the one big launch moment, like this is our launch, but there's nothing to say that you couldn't document the journey, still have your launch moment, and then put out kind of the story of how it came to life after.
Yeah.
So I think some people get really caught up in like the kind of the tactical in the weeds of like, oh, we can't talk about this until it's launched. Fine, do the launch, but you still can document your journey. And there's a reason why the hashtag TBT or Throwback Thursday is popular. People love knowing, kind of looking back on those moments and those milestones. Like you could document it that way, and it would be really powerful.
We were going to talk about lots of other stuff, right? But like we kind of got sidetracked, right? But like to finish up, because I know you've got to get on to a meeting, right? So basically, you're using all of this great content to engage certain communities who are passionate about whatever output or cause that you are talking about, right? So how do you do that?
Yeah, so a lot of how do you do that is, again, we talked about kind of those macro stories, defining kind of some of those key core areas of the business with the micro stories. Then it actually comes into crafting and bringing stories to life. And a lot of people ask me like, well, how do you know you've hit the right storytelling mix? And I always just recommend a lot of testing and learning, because like your macro story is not going to change. You can maybe refine how you tell it or how you kind of bring that to life. But really, that's when you start to think about like essentially your kind of distribution plan. What are the channels that you want to focus on? And then that goes back to the audience insights you've shared. Where do people want to get information from you? Do they want to listen to a podcast? Do they want to follow you on social media? Are they going to come to your website? And thinking about kind of those, do you have a retail store? Do you have a product with a package? Putting a story on a bottle of rum. If your story is not on your bottle of rum, I'm disappointed. So really thinking about those customer facing touch points, and that's really going to help shape to you how you kind of craft and tell those stories. So each channel has different best practices for how you're going to tell a story. Is it text-based? Is it, photography? Is it video? Is it kind of audio only? So really think that's going to help you kind of think about how you bring that story to life, because how you bring a story to life in a video is really different than maybe an image and a bit of copy in a social post versus a longer form kind of audio podcast. So that's really where I would start there. And what I would recommend is if you're starting out, think about doing a pilot. A pilot is also a really great way to sell things in internally, because if your company is really obsessed with performance marketing or content marketing, and you want to start doing storytelling, really building a well-rounded strategy, sharing examples of the types of stories you want to tell, and having really clear kind of KPIs around that is really what's going to help you, sell that in. And that's also going to really help you focus and not kind of spin your wheels creating like tons and tons of content where maybe you only want to do like a handful of videos, and a bunch of kind of supporting image assets to support that,
Yeah.
And then start measuring the response from customers, and that allows you to keep pivoting accordingly.
Yeah, very much so. And it's been absolutely brilliant. I've really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I hope we can sort of talk further fairly soon. So where do people find you, Jessica?
Yeah, so I am on every social media channel out there. I'm Savvy Bostonian on Twitter, but Jessica Gioglio on Facebook and Instagram. Bonus points if you remember how to spell it. But you can find me anywhere, LinkedIn. My website is jessicagioglio.com. And, always reach out. I love getting questions and feedback because that informs, again, happy to give you a personalized response, but maybe also create some more content to help others as well.
Absolutely super. And I'll drop all the links at the bottom of this, most definitely.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I've had so much fun with this conversation. I think we could go on for hours and hours, and I'm curious to hear what kind of questions you'll get, because maybe that's something we can do in a future interview.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens.
Thanks for listening. Please make sure you share this episode with your friends and business connections, and don't forget to drop us a review.